Safeway. Since 1936, the name to look for when you want innovative engineering, superior product design, outstanding customer support, and the strongest distribution network in the industry. Safeway's sectional scaffolding presents the ultimate in flexibility. We have developed this program to give you a better understanding of Safeway sectional scaffolding, its components, handling, erection, and dismantling procedures. Our program is designed to allow you to make sure that you remember key points that are shown in the video. Every few minutes, the program will break for a short review of the information you just viewed. A multiple choice question will come up on the screen, like this trivia question. How many bars, stripes are there on the American flag? You will be given several seconds to decide on your answer. Then, a few seconds apart, each of the wrong answers will fade away like this. When only the correct answer remains, a scene from the program covering the question will come up on the screen. Then there will be more questions to help you double-check your understanding of the material. Now let's begin. Although many various components are required in order to build a safe scaffold, the basic building blocks of Safeway sectional scaffolding are platform components, frames, coupling pins, braces, base plates and screw jacks with base plates. Now that you have seen the basic building blocks and tools of Safeway sectional scaffolding, let's look at some of the points covered in the job site inspection. To begin with, the person who inspects the job site must be qualified to do so. That's because the information gathered will be used to determine the scaffold requirements. At a minimum, the investigation should include the type and condition of the surface upon which the scaffold will rest, weather conditions during the erection and while the scaffold is in use, likelihood of pedestrian and vehicular traffic in the vicinity of the scaffold, overhead and electrical obstructions, the weight of the scaffold, plus the load to be put on it and the method of fall protection best suited to erect the scaffold. It is the competent person's responsibility to determine the feasibility and safety of providing fall protection for those erecting or dismantling supported scaffolds. Before erecting your scaffold, always inspect the job site to evaluate the possible fall arrest anchorage locations capable of supporting a 5,000-pound shock force. If suitable anchorages are not available and one cannot be readily installed without creating a greater hazard to the workers, a job-specific fall plan must be developed, reviewed, and followed while erecting the scaffold. This plan should include all persons expected to be on the scaffold during the erecting or dismantling phase. All scaffolds must be designed and erected to support at least 4 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to it. Scaffolds to be erected higher than 125 feet must be designed by a registered professional engineer. Simpler scaffolds may not require a drawing. However, it is recommended that drawings or sketches be made for most scaffolds. When drawings are needed, they are based on your requirements, the information obtained from the job site inspection, and on component Safeway sectional technical information available from Safeway. Now that the drawings, if required, are complete, you are ready for pre-erection checks. Begin by reviewing the scaffolding plan, double-checking the dimensions and the components that will be required. Carefully inspect every component to ensure that none of them are broken, cracked, distorted, or damaged in any way. Tag and remove from use any damaged parts from the job site so that no one can mistakenly use them. Solid sawn lumber used as scaffold platform planking must be graded as scaffold grade plank. Prior to use, inspect each plank carefully and remove any plank containing defects such as saw cuts, notches, dry rot, splits, discoloration, chemical or acid contamination, or those previously used as sills. The Scaffold Industry Association Handbook for inspecting solid sawn wood plank can also be used for reference. Finally, make sure that the erectors are wearing the proper personal protective equipment. The Safeway Fall Protection Plan has been designed to enable Safeway employees to recognize the fall hazards on a job and establish the procedures to follow in order to prevent falls. If you are not a Safeway employee and do not have a plan of your own, OSHA requires that a competent person determine the feasibility and safety for providing your fall protection. Base plates with mud sills must always be used on the ground, asphalt, or other soft surfaces. The sills should be level and in full contact with the supporting surface. Position the screw jack and base plates in the center of them and nail them to the sills. We'll have more in a few moments. A Safeway sectional scaffold must be able to support how many times the maximum intended load? It must be able to support at least 4 times the maximum intended load applied or transmitted to it. What kind of wood planking should be used as platform material for sectional scaffolds? Only scaffold-grade planking must be used. Screw jacks are recommended for height adjustment and leveling the scaffold. Do not set your scaffold on blocks, bricks, boxes, barrels, or any other unstable objects. If additional height adjustment is required under a specific frame leg to level the scaffold, crib with 2-inch by 10-inch wood pads at least 20 inches long. Here's how to do it. Lay 2 pads on the ground, and then lay 2 pads over the first at right angles. Nail the pads together. Repeat and alternate pad direction until the desired height is reached. Do not extend the pads higher than 18 inches. Then, use a continuous sill between frame legs. Determine the approximate position of the frames by laying guardrails along the wall to be scaffolded. Then pads or sills, frames, and cross braces can be placed at these points. This is a good time to make a final check to see that the equipment is in sound condition and all fastening devices are in good working order. Next, center the sills with base plates or screw jacks at the ends of the guardrails. Begin at high ground and adjust the screw jack handles to 1 inch above their lowest point. This will assure the maximum screw jack adjustment is available when needed. Place a scaffold frame at each pair of base plates and set 2 cross braces next to each guardrail. If the frame does not have coupling pins, now is a good time to put the coupling pins in the top of the frame legs. Snap buttons, rivet and hairpins or pigtail pins should be used to fasten the pins to the frame legs. Erect the first level of scaffold as follows. Insert a screw jack with a base plate or a base plate in each scaffold frame leg. Tip the frame up and attach cross braces. Attach a cross brace to the second frame by repeating this procedure. If a cross brace is to be attached with quick locks, be sure that the cross brace is pushed far enough on the stud to allow the latch to drop. If the cross braces are to be attached to threaded studs, the wing nuts should be finger tight after the crosses have been placed. Make sure all studs for attaching cross braces are the same distance from the top horizontal. Use a level to plumb each frame as you go along. Put the level on the top frame ledger near the leg being adjusted. To level between frames, select a tube or scaffold deck that is longer than the frame spacing and check to make sure that it is straight. Place it on top of the ledgers of 2 adjacent frames and level from frame to frame. To square the bays, temporarily place horizontal diagonal goosers in the bays or place at least 2 prefabricated decks or planks with end hooks on the frame ledgers. The hooks will not seat themselves properly on the ledgers unless the bay is square. Repeat these procedures until the scaffold run is complete along the structure. This will give you a firm foundation from which to build your scaffold higher. The frames shown here are walk-through frames and are not designated by Safeway as ladder frames and should not be climbed by users. A separate means of access must be used when erecting scaffolds, such as vertical ladders, shown here. These should be installed as each level is erected and braced. Attach the access ladder to the frame leg utilizing two SAUB brackets, one near each end on the bottom ladder section and one bracket per access section on additional levels. Place these brackets close to the top of each access ladder section. Other access options will be discussed later. Scaffold decks, Duraplank, or scaffold grade plank should now be placed on top of the frames and along the entire run. All wood plank used on scaffolding must be certified scaffold grade plank and must have proper overhang or be cleated. Frames for the second level should now be hung over the coupling pin on each outside frame leg. Place cross braces across the frame horizontals alongside the deck near the hanging frames. Now you're ready to erect the second level. We'll be back with more in a few moments. What items are used to level your scaffold? Screw jacks with base plates are used to level the scaffold. When should access ladders be installed? Access ladders should be installed as soon as the base level of the scaffold has been erected. What are screw jacks used for? Screw jacks are used to provide height adjustment and level the scaffold. The next element of Safeway sectional scaffold erection is the installation of bracing and ties. Forces may act upon a scaffold which could lift a frame off the coupling pins on which it is resting. These uplift forces, for example, may be caused by high winds or result from the weight placed on the side or end brackets or hoist arms. When it is possible for uplift to occur, frames must be secured to coupling pins with pigtail pins, drop latch pins, or rivet and hairpins. Standoffs, ties, and guys are installed to prevent the scaffold from tipping into or away from the structure being scaffolded. They must be installed on all scaffolds when the height to minimum base dimension ratio exceeds 4:1. However, some states, such as California, have stricter requirements. They require tying or guying when the scaffold height is 3 times the minimum base dimension width. So always check your state and local codes. The first vertical ties are installed at the horizontal member just below the 4:1 base ratio height, after which the scaffold must be tied every 20 feet vertically if it is 3 feet or less in width, and every 26 feet vertically if it is wider than 3 feet. Install the top tie at the top platform whenever possible. When not possible, install this tie no further from the top than 4 times the minimum scaffold width, or 3 times in California. Install ties as the scaffold is erected and fasten them to the frame legs as close to a frame ledger as possible. Place these ties at each end of the scaffold and along the run of the scaffold at horizontal intervals not to exceed 30 feet horizontally. The same rules apply for the attachment points of guy wires for guying freestanding scaffolding. However, an engineer or a qualified person who understands the forces involved should design guys and their anchorages. If you intend to use weather protection on your scaffold, ties must be placed at more frequent intervals, and your scaffold may need to be reinforced to resist the wind forces that will be imposed on it. Consult your qualified scaffold designer to ensure that the load capacity of the equipment you are using will do the job. Side brackets are useful tools, but remember, they are designed to support the weight of personnel only and not the weight of materials. When brackets are used, all coupling pins must be secured to both the top and the bottom of the frame legs. Additional compensation for the overturning effect of the brackets may be needed. Two ways to accomplish this are adding weight on the scaffold frames or installing ties and standoffs to the structure. In all cases, when using brackets, be sure to compensate for their overturning effects on the scaffold. When placing or moving brackets, be sure they are fully seated on the scaffold frames before planking. When scaffold planks are used with brackets, it's a good practice to double cleat the starting and ending planks on the scaffold run. Work platforms must be fully planked using either scaffold decks, Duraplank, scaffold grade planking, or other planking options available from Safeway. Solid sawn plank must be at least a nominal 2 inches by 10 inches in size or equivalent. Make sure the planks span across a minimum of 2 scaffold bearers. Scaffold planks must also extend at least 6 inches, but no more than 12 inches beyond their supports when the platform is 10 feet or less in length, or 18 inches when the platform is greater than 10 feet long. Plank extending less than 6 inches over their supports must be cleated or restrained from movement. When installing lapped planks, the planks must only be lapped over a support and each plank must overlap the other by at least 12 inches. Never overlap plank in any other location. Make sure that once the planks or decks are in place, that they are also secured to the platform to prevent uplift. Guardrails are for the protection of scaffold users. Exposed ends of all work platforms are required to have guardrails and mid-rails installed. Do not use guardrails as a support to hoist objects. Cross braces may serve as either guardrails or mid-rails depending on the height of the crossing point above the platform. This dimension may vary slightly, so refer to your local codes for the dimension used in your area. When guarding the intermediate levels of Safeway scaffolds, which are constructed from the 6-foot 4-inch high frames, 2 guarding options are available. Use of a hook-on guardrail panel which provides both top rail and mid-rail protection, or the use of guardrail stud adapters, which allow the continuous attachment of scaffold guardrails along the scaffold run. The competent person should determine which of these methods or other possible methods is to be used. Ends of runs must also be guarded. Use end guardrail panels or tube and clamp to do this. Side bracket ends can be best guarded using the Safeway side bracket guard panel or tube and clamp members. When scaffolds are 10 feet or more off the ground, toe boards at least 3.5 inches high must be installed in those areas where people are required to walk or work below the scaffold to prevent any tools or materials from falling from the platform. Wood 2x4s may be used as toe boards, or Safeway's sectional scaffolding metal toe boards are also available. The metal toe boards are held in place by simply interlocking at the corners, or by using the toe board clip on straight runs. If tools, material, or equipment will be piled higher than the toe board, screening must be installed from the toe board or platform to the top guardrail. A canopy or catch platform can also be erected to protect employees below. Hoist arms may be used to lift scaffold components or light material to the work platform. Hoist arms introduce an overturning force to the scaffold assembly that must be compensated for. When using hoist arms, the scaffold should be tied to the structure and all coupling pins secured to both the top and bottom frame legs. If the hoist pulling force is from below, it must be directly beneath the hoist. Do not pull from a location away from the scaffold. A tag line should be used to keep the material being hoisted from damaging the scaffold assembly. We'll be back with more in a few moments. When must scaffold frames be pinned? Scaffold frames must be pinned when uplift might occur. When must scaffolds be tied to a structure? Scaffolds must be tied to a structure when its height exceeds 3 or 4 times the minimum base dimension depending upon the code in your area. Planks must be cleated when plank overhang is less than 6 inches. As the scaffold is erected, a proper means of access must be provided. This can be accomplished in several ways. Vertical ladders, such as those shown earlier, which are clamped to the scaffolding. These should extend 3 feet above the platform, with the top ladder section bracket clamped to the top guardrail posts. Internal stairways may be provided. Certain scaffold frames, like Safeway's RT Frame series, are designed to be climbed. In some cases, the worker may even have access to the scaffold from the structure itself. On certain jobs, it may be desirable to have more than one means of access to the completed scaffold. When entering a platform from outside the scaffold, access may be made through the guardrails, access gate panels, or guardrail gates. When a gate is used, be sure that it is installed so that it swings inward. When access ladders or frames designed for climbing are used, a rest platform is required at 35-foot maximum intervals in height. The rest platform can be an intermediate planked scaffold bay next to the access system used. Stair towers may also be used for access. They are installed by erecting 2 frames with screw jacks and cross braces as described earlier. After leveling and squaring the stair bay, install a stair unit horizontal at the bottom of one of the frames, just above the screw jack handles. This will support the bottom of the first stair unit. Install the first stair unit by placing the bottom hooks on the horizontal and lowering the top hooks onto the top frame horizontal. The spring latches on the top hooks will secure the stair unit in place. Next, install the inside and outside handrails. Add another lift of frames and braces, and install another stair unit and handrails. That's all there is to it. Putt logs provide a means of bridging obstacles or openings. The capacity varies with the span, and care should be used to see that they are properly braced and not overloaded. Your Safeway dealer can provide you with specific loading information. Putt logs should extend at least 6 inches beyond their support points. Use putt log hangers to attach putt logs to frames. Make sure the U-bolts are fastened. Putt logs spanning greater than 12 feet require knee bracing. To support the frames above the putt log, use a putt log spreader. Now that the scaffold has been erected, inspect it very carefully from bottom to top before any work is performed on it. OSHA also requires that all scaffolds and scaffold components be inspected for visible defects by a competent person before each work shift and after any occurrence which could affect the scaffold's structural integrity. Dismantling of a Safeway sectional scaffold is quick and easy. Inspect the scaffold to ensure that it is safe to dismantle. You may have to add parts or increase the base width of the scaffold to correct any unsafe condition before tearing it down. Then simply reverse the procedure. Start with the uppermost component installed and work down the levels of the scaffold. Do not remove ties until the scaffold has been dismantled to that level. That's all there is to it. We'll be back with the conclusion in just a few moments. What is the federal OSHA height-to-base ratio requirement for placement of ties or guys? The requirement is 4 times the scaffold's smallest base dimension. Who must inspect the completed scaffold? A competent person must inspect the completed scaffold before each work shift. That wraps up our program on erection of Safeway sectional scaffolding. As you can see, it is extremely flexible, allowing you to scaffold virtually any type of structure. Always make sure that you carefully study the scaffold plan. Review our safety guidelines and brochures if you have any questions, and make sure you are familiar with all of the instructions and the Safeway Safety Guidelines for Sectional Scaffolding. Because of the many variables that affect the performance of Safeway sectional scaffolding, some of the information you have seen may not apply. For specific applications, contact your Safeway representative. Thanks for watching.